Today I want to talk to you about law number 5 of teamwork. This is called the law of the chain. And the law of the chain says the strength of the team is impacted by its weakest link. Now, of all the laws I'm going to teach, of the 17, this law is the most difficult for people to accept. This is going to drain you a little bit emotionally, okay? And I'm just setting you up for this because when you begin to talk about looking at your team, evaluating your team, and then you begin to kind of hone in on who is the weakest link. Kind of reminds you of a TV show, doesn't it, huh? I thought about for this law having that lady come, you know what I mean? And I thought, no, she is disgusting. There's not a leadership bone in her body. She has the gift of separation. And so we won't bring her here. But when you talk about the weakest link, this is a tough law emotionally to accept. And I want to say this. This is a tough law for me to handle. And let me tell you why. I only have one goal in life. It's kind of very simple goals. When people ask me what I do sometimes, it's kind of hard to explain because, I mean, what do you do when when I just went to England, I had to, you get on you write all this information down and for the customs people and, what do I tell them I do? I could tell them I speak, but they look at you and they say, well, I speak too, you can say I write and they say, well, I write too, you know what I mean? So it's kind of a little bit hard. And somebody asked me the other day, so well, what do you do? And I keep thinking, okay, what do I do? And then I said, I think what I do is I add value to people. That's what I do. I take people wherever they are, and I do my best to come alongside of them, train, equip, teach them, simplify the lessons very easy, and lift them to a higher level. I want to add value to people. Now, you take a person like myself that their goal is to add value to people, and you start talking about this law, the law of the weakest link. This is a very difficult law for me because I want everybody to succeed. Not only do I want everybody to succeed, I want to take everybody on the journey with me. In fact, this is a huge weakness in my life. And let me just take a moment and explain this to you because what happens is I'm always going somewhere. I'm leading something. So my tendency is when I'm leading something is I want to gather everybody around me. You follow me? And so I want to take it. What's your name?
Maggie.
Okay, I want to say, okay, Maggie, I want you to get on the team. And I met Gene earlier. Gene, I want you to get on the team. Okay, so what my tendency is to get them all on the boat. You follow me? Get them all on the train, and then I take off with them. Now, every once in a while, you have to stop the train for a little rest break or whatever. Now what happens is when I stop on my journey, sometimes Maggie or Gene, they get off. You follow what I'm saying? And they get off and they decide to have a picnic there and finally I say, well, it's time to get on the train, and they don't want to get on the train. Now, here's where my weakness is. Way too much in my life, I try to convince Gene and Maggie to get back on the train. Now, why? Because I want everybody to take the journey with me. I mean, I happen to think that where I'm going is a wonderful place. And I also happen to think that everybody wants to pay the price to get there. And everybody wants to take the trip. And my wife, Margaret, has been huge in this area. She's really, this has been a lifelong challenge for me. Because she says, John, quit trying to put everybody on the train. Quit trying to take everybody on the journey with you. And I think, but oh, Margaret, if they had any idea where we were going and what we were accomplishing and what we were doing, they'd want to get on the train. And she says, no, John, not everybody wants to take the trip. Now, the law of the weakest link basically says on any team, there's somebody that probably doesn't want to take the trip. I can still remember when this law vividly hit me. It would be back in the late 1970s, and I was getting ready to make a job transition. And I had a marvelous assistant that just was very helpful to me. And so when I was going to move geographically to another state, because the two of us had such a great relationship, I said, I called her by name. I said, Dee, you're going to want to come with me. And she said, yeah, I think we do. And so her and her husband went to the city, looked for houses. And basically, I felt probably were going to come with me. And I'll never forget calling from the Chicago O'Hare Airport back to Ohio, where at that time we lived, getting ready to move to Indiana, calling Dee and telling her I just had been to the place where we were going. And I was all excited. I was telling her, and she was very quiet. And all of a sudden, I thought, there's something wrong. And I never will forget that she, on the other end, said, John, she said, we've decided we're not going to take that journey. And I remember how crushed I was. I thought, oh, my goodness, I want to take her on this trip. I want him to kind of go to the top with me. Now, let me say three things about the journey. Number one, not everyone will take the journey with you. That's just a fact. In fact, in the little blank beside that, put the word choice. People choose different trips. Number two, not everyone should take the journey with you. And beside that, put ability. Some people have abilities that really, or giftedness that really just doesn't allow them to take that trip. Thirdly, not everyone can take the trip with you. And put potential there. Now, what I want you to know about the journey, what I want you to know about this law of the chain is that as you take the team, as you go for the top, as you go for the gold, when you take the team on this trip, I promise you there will be a person that will lag behind. And I want to give you some characteristics of, for a lack of a better word, this weaker team member. Now, let me just say something before I talk about characteristics of a weaker team member, because this kind of bothers me a little bit. I'm not talking about the fact that the person is wrong. And in another area, they may be very strong. But what I'm saying is, on your team, you're going to have maybe more than one weak link. You're going to have a couple people that are just not probably carrying their weight. Does that make sense? Let me give you characteristics of this person that is what I call the weak link in the chain. This person is unable to keep pace with the other team members. In other words, they just have a hard time keeping up. In fact, when I was working this law, several months ago before the book was out and before the training of the kid, I almost called this law the law of the turtle. Because they were just, I wanted to talk about a person who couldn't keep pace with the rest of them, but then I thought, the weak link is a much better description of what I'm trying to describe. But they're unable to keep pace with the other team members. Secondly, they're unable to grow in their area of responsibility. In other words, when you place them in their area of responsibility, there's probably not much growth potential there. Number three, they're unable to see the big picture. Most of the time, a weak link team member doesn't see the big picture and constantly loses perspective. Number four, they're unable to fulfill the expectations given to them. There's a certain amount of expectations placed perhaps in that job or responsibility they have. They come up short. Now, notice the first four, we talk about unable. We talk about ability. The last two talk, I think, much more about attitude. They're unwilling to work on their personal weaknesses. In other words, they're unwilling to shore up the areas where they're perhaps not strong. And finally, they're unwilling to work with the other team members, which is almost always the ultimate issue of having to remove a weak link when somehow they don't gel with the rest of the team. Now, I'm going to come back and talk a little bit more about the weak link and what to do with that situation a little bit later in this law. But I have to find a way to graphically, for you and for the people that we're training in the teamwork laws, I have to graphically find a way to show you how the weak link hurts the team. And the best way to do it is in your notebook, where I illustrate the law of the change by numbers. And this is very simple. It's right in front of you. Let me just walk you through it. Okay, here you've got a team that you've brought together. And you have 5 team members. Let's say the first team, they're all strong members. That you have 5 10s, 10 plus 10 plus 10 plus 10 plus 10. Okay, that equals 50. You have a 10 average. But let's say on the team you have 4 10s and then you have 1 5, a weak link. Now look what happens immediately to the team. 10 plus 10 plus 10 plus 10 plus 5 equal 45, which is a 9 average. Now what's happened is you've reduced the team's effectiveness by 10%. In other words, the weak link has begun to drag the team. instead of that person being the wind beneath your wings, they become the anchor on your boat. But let's talk about a team the way team really works. Because if you've really got a team and it's full of synergy and you put it together and it's doing well, what happens is then a team multiplies, not adds. So let's multiply these team members for a moment. Let's say you have a great team. 10 times 10 times 10 times 10 times 10 equals 100,000. But let's say you've got synergy on this team, but you have one weak link. Now watch what happens. 10 times 10 times 10 times 10 times 5 equal 50,000. The weak link has reduced the team 50%. This is huge. Now, let me tell you what we do with the weak link, because I've done this all the time. I mean, I'm not talking to you from what I've read. I'm talking to you what I've done, okay? What I had a tendency to do is if I had a weak link, instead of removing them off the team, I thought I'll just give them another job. In other words, instead of removing them, I move them around. So let me show you what happens when you take that 5 and move them around. How are we doing, gang? Do you realize that 5 times 10 times 10 times 10 times 10 is the same as 10 times 10 times 10 times 10 times 5? In other words, when it's all done, you still have the same result. Why? Because you have a weak link. And note in your workbook, if they are truly a weak link, no matter where you place them, the result will be negative. And the teamwork thought I want you to have here on the weak link is the team cannot continually cover up its weaknesses. If you've heard me teach much on priorities, one of the things you hear me teach is a principle that I just truly believe in. It's called the Pareto principle, which is sometimes known as the 20-80 principle. And to just reduce this for teaching purposes and illustration purposes, the Pareto principle basically is this: that if you have 10 people in your organization, and you evaluate them and you size them up, that number 1 is truly the best player on the team, and number 2 is the second best player, all the way down to number 10 is the weak link. Okay, with me? Now the Pareto basically says, if you take the top 2 people in your organization, not if you've got 10, but you just take the top 2, the top 2 out of the 10 will give you 80% of everything you need in your organization. In other words, the top 20% will give you the 80% return that you want. That's what we call the 20-80 principle. That's what we call the Pareto principle. I teach it in depth. Sometimes it's a 2-hour lecture. Okay. What I'm teaching you here on the law of the weak link is the 20-80 principle in reverse. Very simply, what happens is, instead of giving the top 20% of the people in your organization 80% of your time and effort, guess what happens? We normally give the bottom 20% of the people on our team 80% of our time, energy, and money. Isn't that true? I mean, watch it. I mean, you're just sitting there and who takes your time? The person that doesn't produce. Who has the questions? And what do? We spend all of our time. And by the way, let me just stop here now. This is huge. The difference between counseling your team and equipping your team is this. When you counsel your team, you work with the weaker members. When you equip your team, you work with the stronger members. If you counsel a team in their weakness, you'll never make your team strong. You've never counseled a team into strength. Because what do? You counsel a person according to their weakness. You equip a team strong. So what we need to do is spend 80% of our time with the top 20%, not 80% of our time with the bottom 20%, but sadly, because of the weak link and because of the attention they need and the time they need and the resources they need and the money they need and the energy they sap up, we spend too much time on the weak links. We spend too much time on the weaker members. Let me illustrate. I don't even think I've ever gone to a horse race, although I've always wanted to go to the Kentucky Derby. I've always wanted to go there. My wife's wanted to go there and wear the hat. Okay, anyway. I don't think I've ever been to a horse race, so I don't know a lot about horse racing, except the one across the line first wins. I know that. But let's say I went to a horse race and I went up to the a place where you can place a bet. And so I go up to the agent and I say, okay, I'd like to place $20. And let me ask you a question, sir. Do you have a horse that's never won a race? The guy says, well, yeah. He said, there's a couple in this race that have never won. I want to place $20 on a horse that's never won. And the guy's looking at him, and he's already thinking, what's wrong with this guy? What's he doing this for? And then I said, well, the reason I want to do this is I want to help their self-image. Now, why is it somebody at a racetrack would know I was stupid? But leaders working with teams all the time place their $20 on people that can't win. This is huge. It's the law of the weak link. And let's say, for example, on our team, and I'm the leader, there is a weak link. Let me give you some observations for your notes, because this will really help you. Until the weak link situation is corrected. Number one, the stronger members will identify the weaker one. They always do. I promise you, you go home to your team right now in the business, and if you could have a candid conversation and say, on the team, who's the weak link? Can I tell you something? All the people that are strong already know who the weak link is. In fact, leaders evaluate very quickly. Leaders walk into the room and in 5 minutes size up the situation. They already figured who can, who can't, who should, who shouldn't, who will, who won't. Leaders evaluate very quickly. So if you go home to your team, it's not like if you tell them who the weak link is, it's going to be a discovery for them. You walk in and say, I just want you to know Charlie's the weak link on the team. The rest of your members aren't going to say, you're kidding. Never entered my mind that we're dragging Charlie. Never entered my mind. Observation number two, until the weak link situation is corrected, the stronger members will have to help the weaker one. In fact, let me put it this way. Well, number three will do it better. The stronger members, until the weak link situation is corrected, will become less effective. Why will they become less effective? Very simple. Because they're having to help Charlie. Number four, and this will always happen, until the weak link situation is corrected, the stronger members will resent the weaker one. After a while, they'll resent this person because they realize they are not able to give their best all the time because they have to cover for somebody else. And number five, the stronger members, hang on now, will question the leader's discernment and courage. Wow. All the team members, listen to me. If you're a leader of a team, let me tell you something. If you aren't taking care of the weak link issue on your team, I want to tell you something. The rest of the team members are looking at you, leader, and they're saying, when is my leader either going to discern this problem or when are they going to have courage to take care of it? In fact, let me say this. Your respect as a leader will be lessened if you don't deal with this situation. Number six, until the weak link situation is corrected, the weaker members will take more time than the stronger ones. That's just a fact. And until the weak link situation is corrected, the weaker members will want to hold on to their position. Oh boy, now let me tell you a fact about the weak link. They tenaciously want to hold on to their position. You do understand that, don't you? You know, you take a stronger member of the team, I don't mean this wrong, stronger member of the team, they always have places to go. And I mean, you say, no longer can we use you. They're saying, that's all right, I had 4 other options. In fact, there's some things, I got a Mount Everest myself I'd like to climb, and off they go. You don't never worry about the strong ones. They always have options. Leaders always have options. But if a person is the weak link, they don't have options usually. And they're the ones that hold on to tenure. They're the ones that hold on to title. They're the ones that hold on to position. They guard that sucker with their life. One more thought. Until the weak link situation is corrected, number 8, the weaker members will control the relationship. And let me just say one thing about relationships, and we'll wrap this law up, and it's very simple. Here it is. The weaker person always controls the relationship. The stronger one always has to give in, always has to go the second mile, turn the other cheek. Isn't this true? It's true in marriage, it's true in business. The weaker person controls the relationship. So when you have a weak link situation, many times the rest of the team is being controlled by the weaker person, and therefore they're not effective. And the law of the chain question, a very simple one. Am I helping the team or am I hurting the team?